negotiate if we don't get elected. I mean, we could still do it, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be very much continuity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't have to pay them up front. Just say we'll give them a certain percent. Just now.
Well, if they want to wait until summer, just like they've done in the past, why are we starting so soon? I mean, I could come, but the thing is, Tim just has to carry around. I mean, I'd be willing to do it. Are they gonna be?
Two of them controlled it myself, but no, I don't.
Well, I could come, maybe we could have someone as an alternate.
I don't think Truman is. He's at home doing some math stuff right now. So, Charlie came the last 2 years, but he didn't. I mentioned it to him. He's got to be about this. Yeah, for sure. I'm like, take care of that first and foremost.
Oh, I don't have glasses. And your hair's pulled back. And I thought, oh, she looks really sharp. Who's that lady?
With the tight support shirt.
Thank you.
We'll get you out of here. Yep.
Well, sure. Just add him to Tim's capital. Yeah, he'll buy it.
Sorry,
A lot of money.
I started to write the date on your name.
Yeah. He's all fired up.
I tell you, the time they stole my signature off the website, somebody tried to had hacked my email.
Really?
And I get this notice from my investment guy. Do you really want $10,000 wired out?
I thought they tried to do the school board job.
Well, they went on the school board website, but they got through my school board email.
Oh, yeah. Remind me to tell you a funny story about signatures.
Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask that roll please be called.
Feldman.
Here.
Holzhauser. Here. Hodel.
Here.
Humbles.
Here.
Tyra.
Here.
Wagenbach.
Here.
Wisdom.
I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting, and we'll begin with the superintendent's report. Dr. Dearman.
It's on. All right. We've had 3 FOIA requests since our last meeting, and Mr. McKenzie has completed all of those requests. General information, those who excel awards. I'd like to congratulate several members of our staff who have been recognized for their exceptional contributions to education through the Illinois State Board of Education's Those Who Excel Awards. Deputy Ryle and Deputy Medina have received the award of special recognition in the category of team. Their dedication to ensuring the safety and well-being of our students is truly commendable. Dr. Matt Andrews has earned the award of special recognition in the category of administrator. His leadership and commitment to excellence have made a significant impact on our school community. Mrs. Sally Saul has been honored with the award of meritorious service in the category of classroom teacher. Her passion for teaching and unwavering support for her students exemplifies the best our educational mission. Each of these individuals will be recognized at a statewide banquet in May for their accomplishments selected from hundreds of nominations across the state. Again, congratulations on these well-deserved honors. Last night, I had the pleasure of watching members of the Dunlap High School section of the Future Business Leaders of America present at Fortress Bank's Bank Tank event. It's a Shark Tank type event. This event recognizes the importance of small business owners in our communities and the importance they have on our local economies. The students' business, AgriVision Technology, combines machine learning algorithms, IT sensors, and agronomy expertise to provide solution, use data-driven insights for increased crop yield and sustainability, reduces waste, and increases effective resource utilization. Their business motto is farm smarter, not harder. The students did an excellent job presenting their business, and Fortress Bank awarded them a $5,000 donation to their club. Congratulations to the students, and thank you, Fortress Bank, for your donation. Last reminder, our March board meeting will be held Wednesday, March 12th. That's a week earlier than usual, same time, same place. And that's all that I have.
Thank you, Dr. Dearman, and congratulations. Very well deserved on those awards. So proud of our staff in general, but we really appreciate all that you do, and well deserved. At this time, we'd like to move on to public comments. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, this concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the information discussion items. The school activity accounts reports are included in the board packet. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. Abby.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you tell me the mechanics of the school activity accounts? Is the school activity fee, how does that all work? I'm looking at you. I'm sorry?
How does
you didn't hear me.
how does the school activity fee work? How is it distributed? And is it in the general fund? Does it go per into each building for their discretion? How does the activity?
So these activity fund accounts here are completely separate, these activity account reports? Yeah, mostly just correct. Okay, that answers my question, thank you.
All right. Information regarding the 2025-26 student handbook is included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? I want to, this is just discussion, but there were a few things that were brought up during this, and I know that everyone worked really diligently. Some of the things, not many things are going to be changed, but there were some changes to some tardies and repercussions for that, as well as detentions for skipping class, and we also took a look at the valedictorian status, but I believe that has been removed. That
I'll meet with Katie and Matt, if that's where.
okay, there was a new suggestion about suspensions. If anyone has any questions after you take a look at it, if you haven't had a chance, feel free to give me or Mr. Andrews a call, or even Mrs. Cazalet. So.
You run high school, well, high school,
Well, it's actually, yes, it has, I was on the high school, but there were also middle school and grade school. I don't know if anyone had any concerns that they wanted to bring up if they served on those committees. Okay. Next, we have a presentation from Mr. Russrum from Gorins and Associates regarding our yearly audit, and he's promised to be kind of brief. But informational. Brief and informational. Brief as in, don't go on for a half hour.
you know, accountants, you know.
I know.
You only get to talk like
I spent a career with Russ.
This isn't the one time.
All right. Well, with that in mind, I did dog tag a lot of pages in the audit report. I know you received the audit report at least last month, if not before. But with 15 minutes or so in mind, I think I'm going to skip most of that. I don't know if any of you have brought the audit report. report. But there is, at least, it's towards the back of it.
I do have a couple of copies for you, really, what's a copy right now. It's also on our website.
We've had it for 2 months, so we've had a chance to look at it.
Okay. I mean, on page 51, it does present the fund balances of the district before the advance taxes. I've always thought it was important to monitor the fund balances before advance taxes, just because those dollars are meant for the next year, yet there's $21 million that come in June that kind of balloon up the balance sheet, if you will. So it's something that, that is presented towards the back of the report that you can look at and see, oh, okay, here's where our fund balances are before those advance taxes. And, you know, I ran through a couple of the funds. So the ed fund had about 4.5 months worth of expenditures. Building fund had about 3.3 months worth of expenditures. Transportation fund is actually one of the more solid funds. It has more than a year of fund balance. And then obviously the other thing after I take a look at that, it's like, okay, what about working cash fund? Are there dollars in the working cash fund? Yeah, at Dunlap there is dollars in the working cash fund. So that's all good. But anyway, I just want to mention that because it's a report that gets buried in the back, but I think it's good information. Also, so the audit report, I know each one of you have read it thoroughly, but in any event, you know, there's about 4 pages in here that's really what you hire us to do, and that's to issue an opinion on the financials. We issued an unqualified opinion. It's the same opinion that the district's received in the past, but I think that's worthy of mentioning. It's an unqualified opinion. So if we have time, we can jump back into this stuff. That being said, I'm going to focus on the handout that each of you should have in front of you. And the handout itself is typically going to be presented with the operating funds in mind. I've got an extra one if I didn't get it.
Yeah, so everybody's down there talking. Thank you, sir.
You can have 2. But in any event, so most of this is presented as the operating funds, which is the education fund, building fund, transportation fund, and working cash fund. So we'll just jump in on the first page. So the top piece of the first page is it's the fund balances of the district. And you can see on the far right-hand column, $212 million, that's the fund balance, but most of that is made up of the buildings, the contents, the equipment. So backing out $150 million of those types of fund balances, and then also the restricted fund balances end up at $46,849,000 of the equity and the operating funds. That's actually an increase of $1.1 million from the previous year. I was going to give you a quiz, but I'm not going to do that. You know, if we looked in the financial statements, the district issued $2 million of working cash funds, right? So, I mean, that's going to be kind of important to remember that you had a positive increase here, because as we turn the page, it's not a positive before those transfers, right? And that's what the next few pages will present. The center section deals with actual results compared to budget. And, you know, we like to see plus or minus 10%. And for the most part, that happened. The transportation fund did collect more than what was anticipated by 29%. And, you know, the state has an interesting way of delving out the transportation aid. Typically, there's 4 payments, but I don't know that there's anything typical. Some years there's 3, some years there's 4, some years there's 5. This year had 5 payments. And being on the cash basis, that there is 5 payments, and that's typically what pushed it over. There's also, and this will be coming up as well, the interest income, right? Interest income was more than anticipated as well. The bottom piece here is the financial profile score. I don't know if the districts have been officially apprised of what that score is yet. Obviously, ISD does that, but we run through a preliminary 3.55. That is financial recognition. And the one category, actually there's 2 categories. There's that lowers it from a perfect 4.0 to the 3.55. One is the debt, outstanding debt. And the second item would be the expenditure to revenue ratio.
Can we ask you questions during?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Financial recognition, you're saying that one of the main things is our debt. Do you do this for a lot of schools?
Yes.
Okay. Where do we stand? Are there a lot of schools that have fours and we don't happen to?
There are quite a few schools that have fours. There's quite a few scores that are at the 3.55. Most districts are scoring the financial recognition category. Some schools would have slightly off, that the debt would be the only thing. I feel like the debt is a little, it doesn't make sense to me that the district, I mean, I think there's over half, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, it is in the audit report, but I think there's over half of the legal debt margin that still can be issued. It's like,
Yeah. I mean, as an example, I did the calculation when we were talking about issuing bonds for Wilder Weight. And even if we issued the bonds for Wilder Weight, it would still be at the same rating that we are today. It would.
So we haven't saturated our
Because it's like, yeah,
ability to do,
it's a fairly wide, when you look at how this is calculated, I have a guide in my office, but, if you're below a very small percentage, then it's at 4, and then then it's a 3 if you're in this other big wide thing, and that 3 out of 4 on that one category is what pulls us down to 255. But it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, we're still financial recognition, which is the highest, you can be.
We'll stay in that category even with.
Yeah, even if we issue $40 million bond, we'll still be in that same, financial recognition.
That's where, I would assume that ranking impacts what interest rates you're charged on your bonds.
It's more our S&P rating that affects our rating than this, although this probably goes into some of the calculations that they use to our S&P rating.
Okay.
Are there any other categories, Mike, that would bring us down?
Well, the other one that's bringing it down a little bit is the fact that in those operating funds, our expenses have been over our revenue
Right.
the last couple of years, so that's also at 3. And so the
Okay.
math was, we have several 4s and those 2 3s, which are weighted differently, then that's how we.
Are there any of those 4 categories that you
Those
would
other
anticipate?
categories, no, we're not even close.
We would never,
Yeah,
okay.
we're not even close to being out of the 4.
So next year on that category, we won't be a 3, we'll be a 4. No, I mean, because our budget is not in the red next year.
we still have bond debt.
Yeah, I mean, we still have bonds.
I'm not saying that the financial
You're saying
recognition store, I'm saying that
expenditures,
particular
revenue.
item.
That
Yes.
particular item, it might be, I'd have to go back and look at exactly how to do it, but I was figuring out that thing fairly recently, when I'm doing projections for next year and everything, and I wanted to make sure that we're gonna still stay in this if we issue this debt, and we will, so.
Well, that came out of the question, the debt capacity that we have, and we basically hamstring the district by building Wilder Weight, and the answer was no, we could actually do it at no tax increase, we have the debt capacity, we could build 3 Wilder Weights if we wanted to. We have that much room.
That would build 3, it would not, that it would affect us squarely.
Yeah.
But easily do build 1 and not affect this particular rating.
Smile at that, you knew I was gonna ask a question.
I'm glad you asked questions.
So out of 135 million legal debt margin, 100 of 3 is stored. Just as a point of reference. Okay. Next page of the handout has the results for 22, 23, 24. In the far right-hand column has the change in between the years of 23, 24. And you can see the first subtotal, almost $49 million. That's the revenues brought in. And if we focus on the far right-hand column, what is increasing? As you can see, taxes, real estate taxes are the items that are really increasing. Even the evidence-based funding went up some. The other ones changed, maybe not as great as obviously the real estate taxes. And then if you follow down, you can see the changes in between the individual categories of expenses. And if we follow it all the way down, the total expenses dispersed was 3.471 higher than the previous year, about a 7.5% increase. And if we focus on 24 all the way at the bottom, a negative 973. And that again is the combination of the just looking at it a little bit differently, well, 69 cents comes from real estate taxes, and other local revenue makes up 11%. That other local revenue might be the food service program with interest earnings, the corporate replacement taxes, those types of revenues. And one thing as I look at this, I would have thought the local was actually higher now than what it used to be. It was actually higher years ago, to the tune of, approaching 90% was local. And the state was more like 10 and the federal was 2. So in any event, the locals actually, as you look over time, is probably lower than typical, but 80% is a strong number for us. Next page of the handout, the operating fund revenues, what are the trends, where has it been? You can see real estate taxes have been trending upwards, and other local revenue has increased. Some of that is a little bit of, I shouldn't say a shell game, but I mean, they're for a bit. The lunch program or the child nutrition program was completely free, right, during COVID. And so those dollars ended up over, you see the larger blue bar over on the right-hand side, well, that included some free lunches. And now we come back to the other local revenue, well, now the food service program is back for business. And as well as replacement taxes have been increasing, interest earnings have been increasing over time as well. Evidence-based funding, not so much. Other state sources, pretty minor. And then the federal flow-through, again, we talked about those are probably higher than typical just because there's been COVID funds, right? Next page of the handout is the expenses compared to fiscal year 23-24 for the ed operation and maintenance, transportation in the total. And again, we already mentioned that in total was $3.471 million increase in total. And salaries and benefits, as we turn the page, you're going to see that most of that increase is going to come in from the salaries and benefits. As you turn the page, where are the dollars spent, right? So salaries and benefits, 80%. And then you can see, the next category, 9% for supplies and materials, capital outlay. Again, this is only the operating funds. It doesn't include the capital projects fund. So that's 5%. I think if you went backwards over time, you can see the other objects as a small sliver. And if we focused on it, there's been a transition bringing all the special ed back into the district, right? So, the other objects, I think, historically probably made up more, and the salaries and benefits were probably slightly less, if we look backwards. Next page of the handout. So what? Real estate taxes, we've seen kind of just looking at these charts and graphs that real estate taxes are really important, and salaries and benefits are one of the larger expenses, right? And so as we see this over time, we can see, oh wow, so yeah, salaries and benefits are largest. And purchase services, and somewhat flat, supplies and materials have been increasing. Capital outlay, $2.5 million. Some of the projects that I went back and looked at, some parking, some paving improvements over, it wasn't this past summer, but the previous summer, some roofing, some sewer extensions, some gym floors, a vehicle, those types of things. Okay. Next page, and so this is where, this is a simple one, right? But again, what Mike alluded to was the fact that, the financial profile, I mean, if we were really focused on that and focused on it. But yeah, so in 22, 23, and 24, what expenses exceeded the revenue. So that is, in calculating that score, it obviously impacts it.
Do you have this on like a electronic file?
I could send you the PDF.
I think it'd be nice to put it on board books so that the public can see it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Next page of the handout, comparative, the attendance. This isn't the fall housing numbers. We didn't count students, but there is something that ISB tracks, and that's the comparative 9-month average daily attendance. You can see does come into play in calculating the estimated operating expenses per pupil. And again, state mandated calculation is nothing we came up with. So you can see that 11,754 is the estimated operating expense per pupil. If you want to look at 2023, 11,235, that's 7,505 less than the state average. For it's middle line, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's, funny thing, there's only like, out of the middle line, what is there, three districts that are unit districts. Dunlap being one, Morton being the other, I think Canton is the other. So, just as a point of reference, Canton is at 16,000 roughly. And Morton is at 12,467. I don't know if you compare yourselves to anybody else, but,
Russ, can I interrupt you?
yes.
This chart here, couple pages back,
Yes.
is this also what you're seeing post-COVID, or are we in the norm, or are we,
As far as,
well, the expenses outstripping revenues?
it depends district to district, obviously, depends what's going on within the district. Back there. I would say that, the revenues and expenditures are closely aligned, if you will. Not too many districts are banking huge dollars.
Right.
I'm not saying there aren't any, but, as far as the revenues exceeding, I don't know that I could comment on that without going back through some of these and looking at them.
I guess I'm more concerned about expenses exceeding revenues.
Yeah.
Those are the alternate.
Right.
Right. It's a path that can't,
What's that?
it's a path that can't be sustained long term.
I mean, schools are struggling just like every other business with expenses raising, especially salaries raising, greatly in the last few years because of, obvious reasons, okay, with why. It just costs a lot more, and most of our expenses are salaries, and so, struggle for everybody. We've been talking about this for the last 5-6 years, and, because, not necessarily because, but one of the things, the minimum wage going up, that's forced all wages to go up, and so that's really affected our expenses. And unfortunately, we rely on property taxes mostly, and so when those are not going up, and expenses are going up, it's a struggle.
We narrowed that gap by 50% from 23 to 24. You mentioned we passed the balanced budget moving forward. Do you project that gap closing, getting closer to even, or is that hard to predict?
Yeah, it really depends. Right now, it's harder to predict than ever.
Yeah.
Especially with everything that's going on at the state level and the federal level. You knew what revenues are doing last year, it's very popular right now. Everybody, yes.
Yeah.
It's even worse today, because more uncertain today than ever. Probably trigger, other than maybe COVID, about what's going to happen with revenue. At the federal and state level.
I think the next page of the handout I think points to maybe the past struggles, if you will. Again, we said, well, what's the biggest, just focusing on revenue, what is the biggest driver of revenue? And we can all agree it's real estate taxes, right? For Dunlap District, real estate, very important. Not to say the other revenue isn't important, but as you can see, the EAV, in 2018, for 1, 2, 3 years was on a decline, and coming out of it, it wasn't that sharp of an increase. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4 years, but you've basically just recovered to maybe a 2018 by 2023. And obviously, if a district is levying the maximum rate against the real estate taxes and the EAV is declining, well, it's probably going to be less dollars coming into the district. But now, the other nice thing with this chart is obviously, as a school board, is that EAV has seen some substantial increases. And then you can take a look at the compare large jump, and I don't even know if it's that large, but the large jump was a debt service. There was some lease increases in retirement, but that, I mean, that goes back to 2013 as well, as far as what it goes. Next page of the handout, this is fund balance with those advanced taxes on top, right? And then on the bottom is stripping out those advanced taxes. You can see it actually widened a little bit in the current year, right? And again, if we look deeper down into, okay, what makes this up? Well, the ed fund had about 4.5 months worth, right? I mean, we could go back into the audit report and look and add those up, and they come back to these figures here. Next page, and I debate whether even putting this in here, but it's on behalf of, and this is really, it doesn't impact the district one bit. Okay, it's a revenue, it's an expense, but it's something that in the back of my mind, it's like, well, this is what the state has kind of committed to putting into the TRS system on behalf of the district. It isn't apples to apples like that, it's an actual evaluation, right? And I always think that, you know, the state would probably be motivated to push this back to the district. This hasn't been a conversation, I don't know if you remember, I would say it's probably been 7 years since the state has mentioned this. But obviously the state would love to push this back to the local communities. The TRS pension for this district, $182 million. And the district share out of that, $2 million. And that, here's the next page, outstanding debt of the district. You can see, you know, the large one in 12 to 13 was Hickory Ridge and DHS additions. There was another small slight increase in 17 to 18 with the Valley Middle School expansion. Other than that, you can see the district just keeps making payments, right? The principal keeps ratcheting down. Next page of the handout is just looking at the assessed value. You know, real estate tax is a big deal within the Dunlap district, and just looking at the assessed value by category. You know, farming isn't a big. I shouldn't say it's not a big deal, but you know, just looking, where does the assessed value really? What drives this? Residential, right? You can see it, and you can see where it bottomed out. And you remember the graph we saw bottoming out, and now we can see the increases for the last several years. Commercial, same, you know, commercial is very important as well, but the increases in commercial aren't really what they are in residential. Really, the residential is driving the EAV of the district. I really don't have any comments on that last page. There's just more information. It's really where the data is driven from for this graph here. So that is the report that I have. And some of the time wasn't my time.
I know, I understand, it's quite all right. It's very helpful for us to be able to answer, or to ask questions.
Yeah.
This is a question that we've asked for 20 or more years, and I know you don't have the answer, but how does the district continue to survive when salaries and expenditures aren't keeping up with the revenue, other than continue to raise taxes or cut staff? I mean, what's gonna happen? It's
It's a vicious cycle, it seems to me. But you can focus on your AAV, right? I mean,
Right.
That's where the increased dollars came from. We saw that on the second page. As far as the generation of additional dollars, it isn't evidence-based funding. It's not the state, it's not the federal.
Right.
In fact, the federal will probably go down. Hopefully, all the COVID money is not spent on hard goods, right? Not salaries and wages. Because that becomes problematic for a district as well.
But the EAV will probably not continue to go up 7% every
Right.
year, and that's what's concerning, so.
May I make
Anyone
a
have any
request?
questions? Absolutely.
When this can be done again in the future, it would be nice if this could get to us early and be up on the board, so that people here and at home that are watching can see what you're talking about too.
Get a PDF out.
I think
Yeah.
it helps us when we're negotiating.
Well,
It
we're a
helps the
public school
public to
district.
understand why, what their tax rates are, how we haven't raised the tax rate, although our property values go up, so if they do pay more taxes. So I think most people may not wanna look at it, but there might be some that would.
And we can make this available on our website, right?
That's what, yeah,
Russ,
that's,
are you okay if you send this and I
Yeah.
post it, or is it proprietary?
I think that's a good.
I can send it to Mike and Ian, I'll get it posted.
Thank you.
well, it's not secret, I mean, we're a public school, right?
Yeah, the audit report and the EFR are out on our website.
Yeah, it tells us things.
Any further questions for Russ or for anyone else?
Thank you, Russ.
Thanks, Russ. Good job, Russ.
See you next year, Russ. Maybe. Maybe I will. All right. What's that? We can come either way. That's right, we can come either way. All right, that concludes his presentation. Now we're gonna look at the information regarding the destruction of closed audio that's been included in the board packet. This is something we typically do and have to review every year. Is there any discussion? Next, Dr. Adrian is slated to present information regarding summer projects. Dr. Adrian.
Yeah.
Okay, well, last couple of years, I think we spent 1.8 and 1.6 million dollars on summer projects. So one of the big messages I got loud and clear was coming in under a million. Dr. Dearman and I talked about how we're going to do that, and mostly focus on health, life, safety. You saw the list of items in here that we've proposed. Sorry about that. I want you to know that we've done a lot this year, the school year, to take care of a lot of the health, life, safety stuff that's been on the ROE inspection list. So every year they come through, they write us up for different violations and recommendations and things we need to take care of. Also, this year you noticed probably in November, we got a bill from Farnsworth for the 10-year health, life, safety. We got to do in 5 buildings. So those help us also identify all the health, life, safety things we need to do. The good thing is that they're spotted in the 10-year health, life, safety. We don't have to do that amendment process, which is quite cumbersome. So we were pretty encompassing those 10-year inspections. If you look through those, there are priority A's and priority B's. All the priority B's are not the same. Yes, you could probably not do some of them, and nobody will probably notice except the principal in that building or myself. But some of the Schedule B's are important to have, so there's a little bit of difference in there. I know you've had time to look at them, and some of you've asked me some questions on them. Is there anything in particular that you have as far as questions? One thing I wanted to note, and that's coming up later on the agenda, is the Banner piping project for their heating and cooling. We used that project, we identified that to apply for our school maintenance improvement grant. And so we've been granted that $50,000 to apply towards that project, so that comes off the bottom.
Great.
So it's not really the 209,000, it's really 159.
Just one question on the clocks.
Yeah.
On Dunlap Middle School, 23,000. How many clocks is that, Dr. Ingram?
60, there's 60 clocks. And the thing that makes, clocks nowadays unique is they all tie under our bell system. And that all goes through our intercom systems. And all of our schools, well, the 5 most recent schools, we've had all new intercom systems put in, new bell systems that were antiquated, and those clocks tie directly into that. A lot of that stuff is proprietary. The good news is that Johnson's bid on this, and they've been tremendous on our bell work so far. So they've done a really good job. They've been responsive. They have a couple of people there that are super sharp. In fact, they're the ones that figured out our fire detection system here at high school. When we thought we were going to spend $110,000 for that, we ended up spending about $25,000 because they figured that whole thing out. So confident in the bidder on that, and confident confident in that price. You know, it's about a little less than $400 a clock, but that's what they cost. If Katie were to get one repaired for this building here, it's gonna be $350 to $375 to get it replaced here, so.
Does that make sense? I guess my question is, so the clocks that are currently in there are not
No
tied?
longer functioning, and they no longer tie into our bell system.
How many, so with the other schools that we have, when will we need to replace those?
I think they're compatible, otherwise.
They're all
we're-
compatible?
Yeah, last summer we did we did DMS, the bells, that's why this has become an issue,
Okay.
so.
It's become an issue because they got it and the other school didn't, is that what?
No, it became an issue because of the updated bell system
Oh, I see.
and intercom.
So what are they doing now? They just look at the clock and
The
then
clocks
when
are
the bell
wrong, the
rings,
clocks are wrong now, yeah,
clocks are wrong.
yeah,
And then when the bell rings, do they hear it throughout the?
yeah, they do, yeah, the bells,
But-
the bells and intercom.
So they're relying on maybe a wall clock or a
Right,
different
or
clock.
their phones, yeah.
Their phones.
Yeah.
I said their phones, okay.
But yeah, so we've gone through this quite a bit, trying to pare costs down. When you get down to district expenses, pavement maintenance is down from, I think it was $110,000 we put in there last year to 30. So that's from constant assessment of our pavement with Farnsworth. We've got a 12-year plan for those. And even though it outlines what we may need in 2028, we look at 2027, we look at it, we may not need that. So it's kind of you're spitballing what you're gonna need, but in reality, you may not need it. So, we've pared that down quite a bit. We've also pared down the roof maintenance, which was, I think, 60 grand last year, down to 30. Because this year we budgeted 60 grand, and we spent a little less than 23,000 so far. So we're starting to get a better gauge of where they're at, and those facilities are coming up, so they're not needing as much annual maintenance. I mean, facility maintenance.
Am I mistaken, or was this, the painting at Dunlap Middle School?
High school?
No, was it the high school that
Yeah.
had the $41,000?
Yeah, high school.
Okay, is that something that's been on there a couple times and we've not
No,
approved it?
this should be the second year of a 3-year plan to get the lower level painted. So last year we did the S hallway. This year it's the in hallway, which is 14 or 15 classrooms. The actual hallway, the bathrooms, all the little cubbies, you know what the in hallway looks like. Lots of wall space, so
And that's that's an estimate or we've already got
that's
it?
an extra price, the quote on that, yeah. That's from Hoops Painting. They've done a lot of our painting the last couple of years. And in fact, they're a little bidder on the training center also, so they got that package.
Question on the soccer field, what are you doing for $125?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. I pointed that out in the narrative portion of the discussion item. So, to build our training center, we have to take all of the dirt that we've stockpiled in 2014 that's just west of our existing soccer field. So we need almost all of that, every cubic yard of that dirt to move up to the corner lot for the new construction. So, with that in mind, we've got all the equipment there, we're tearing it all out. We need a practice soccer field because that soccer field gets used by boys and girls spring and fall, all summer with the camps. There's no break for it, so it gets beat up quite a bit to get that in. So, my thinking along with that was, and Mike's the first one to point that out, like, we're gonna have all that equipment down there. I don't wanna take his idea, but it was a good idea. All the equipment down there and all the expertise down there, why wouldn't we do it right instead of leaving a rough grade down there? So, that price there, Tim, is $125,000. You see 19,000 included for irrigation, which you have to have. We're gonna come in under that price, no question about it. The reason why I'm confident in that is that first bid of $125,000 was 4 inches of topsoil across the entire area that they're taking out. Well, we only need 4 inches of topsoil on the actual playing field and half inch to an inch on the stuff outside the playing field.
6 inches, wasn't it?
What's that?
Was it 6 inches across?
No, it's
the
4.
original bid?
4 in the bid, yeah. They'd love, I mean, everybody loves to have more, but 4 was the original bid. So, there is gonna be some cost things there, but that's the high number right now. So, again, the thinking is, it's gonna cost us twice as much down the road, why would we do it when we have the opportunity?
So it's high at Granite or Valley right now?
Oh, yeah, if you go look at that ground is about 5 feet higher than the existing soccer field.
Between the soccer field and the road?
Yeah, between the existing soccer field and 91.
Didn't we kind of say we were gonna do this years ago?
Yeah, so, when I became the principal, we talked about the soccer field and getting the maintenance done on that, because they made an error in the last soccer field, they didn't bring any topsoil in, so we spent the last 10 years amending all the soil, trying to get it to where it's playable. And at that time, they said, well, we're supposed to build a soccer field, practice soccer field also, but that's never come to fruition.
Well, it's my understanding that that was part of the original plan when the soccer field was
Yeah.
built, and they cut it for a cost savings.
So now that we got the equipment down there and the expertise,
Makes sense.
that's why I brought it. I thought it would be a good idea if I passed that opportunity up to, get in front of it. And the other thing we're gonna talk about a little bit later, the paving project at Dunlap Grade School, you notice in there on that proposal, that far north portion of that parking lot along the new pickleball court is not actually our property. So, but we maintain that, and there's a gentleman's agreement between the district and the village that they would give us the authority to use that property, even though it's theirs, as long as we maintain it. Well, I didn't wanna have us redo that and spend $25,000 on property that's not ours without you guys knowing that and saying, yeah, that's big, if you ever consent to do that.
We have a pretty good working agreement with the village.
Go ahead. That's good, thank you. Any other questions on the project list? While we got you sitting up there, Dr. Adrian,
When we go to the projects, we do that. The other two proposals,
no, I just want to talk to you on another issue. The board approved those, solar panels on some of the
Yes.
schools. Is that process moving forward?
yes, we've actually, they've had real difficulty obtaining the rights from Ameren to do the high school, because Ameren is doing a bunch of calculations, they don't know if they have the current setup to house what it would cost the inflow. So they've been going through that, we're on the expedited list, our vendor, CDEG, is paid to have it expedited, but we're waiting on the high school. That said, we're gonna move forward with the high school one here shortly.
Is the other one producing yet?
No,
Is it installed?
well, the idea from the investor group was to have all three do it at the same time, so you have workers here at one time, get all three done. So now we're tired of waiting on all three, let's get going what we've got going, and start seeing some return on our investment. So, yeah, it's been a process.
Okay,
I have one more question, and I'm sorry, I'm just now getting to, I know you sent me an email back. Do we have a plan for all of the buildings when things are
We
at
do,
their
and
end
I'll
of
talk to
life?
you about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just
So-
wanna make sure we're keeping up with that.
Yeah, so the plans you referred to, no one's ever seen those plans. I have them, after we dug for them, but there is never any work put towards those. But we have a similar plan that we follow, that our two HVAC guys, Joe and Tyler, they have an annual inspection they do, and they have a semi-annual, and I'll share that with you.
Okay,
But we also have the 10-year plan on the pavement, that's something substantial, and then we have the agreement with Western Roofing on our maintenance.
I just wanna make sure, and I know that, you're told to, we're always looking at our budget, right? But I don't wanna defer anything that's maintenance related, because that poses more risk than if we
100%,
do
yeah.
not do that.
Well, and it's one of those things where fortunately, Dr. Dearman and Mike have been good to work with, like we have the two water softeners pop up, one for the high school, which is huge, it's a huge, $44,000, I think it was, for that softener, and then the valley, so we're constantly replacing stuff that comes up, so it becomes a bigger issue like a pool did.
Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Dr. Adrian. Information regarding the recommended updates to board policies from press has been included in the board packet. I've looked at these myself as serving on that committee. The only thing that I think really stands out is there's gonna be one more board training that'll be required. And, that has to do with improving student outcomes. There was some information about defibrillators, making sure we have one at all of our activities. I did notice something, they have new instruction on climate change and, the accelerated placement process. So, if anyone has any questions on those, after you take a look at them, if you haven't already, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Dearman or to me.
The board training, Abby,
Yes.
when will that be available for us to take?
Well, I don't know. It wasn't really in there, but it's something, I'm sure it's gonna be another online session that you
Okay.
sit through. So now you have 5 trainings to, yeah, okay. I'm sure it won't be too cumbersome, but student outcomes are important. All right, information regarding the 2024-25 facility rental agreements included in the board packet. Also included is information regarding the athletic participation fees. requested at the January meeting, previously sent to board members. Any discussion? Next?
Yeah, I would like to at least bring it up,
Sure.
just see what folks have to say. So thanks for sending us the information, intel. So as it stands right now with the activity fees, we're at $90 per student, right? And that's capped. Looking at the Mid Illini, Canton is 50, Lorton is 95, right? So it looks like, based on what you sent us, our fall sports, we ended up in the black. Our winter sports, we were in the hole 12,000, I think. Is that right? Yeah, 12,000. So spring sports, just out of curiosity, are those like expense wise? Is that less than fall and winter?
You have less animals, football is expensive, a lot of workers, lots of security. The winter, about the ambulance, less security, less game workers. The spring, there's a lot of fees for spring for ball. You go to a cross country,
Yeah.
you go to a track and run. Golf is expensive, it's the fall.
So from like a spectator fee standpoint,
You can buy admissions.
yeah, admission fees, is that what you mean?
No, he's talking about like use of the course. and that
To,
kind of stuff.
oh, I got you.
Okay, there's no sports in the spring and the admissions.
Gotcha.
Whereas fall and winter, we do.
Right, okay, that makes sense. Okay, because we're talking about potentially increasing it to 100, or, and then maybe 50 for an additional one.
I think 50 is a little high,
Yeah.
but I think
And
it's
that's-
worth a discussion.
It is worth a discussion, that's why I want to bring it up. I think it's, as we all know, we're all heavily burdened with taxes, right? The report in December, we were #1 in the country, Peoria was, in terms of tax burden relative to home value. So if there is another avenue to try to like cover this spread if we can, or figure out a way to do it without passing it off, additional burden to our taxpayers and our parents, I think we should try to, do whatever we can to try to prevent putting more burden on them. Because as we know, we're all parents with kids and activities. There's always out-of-pocket expenses in addition to that fee. And people understand costs are going up, so it makes sense. We have to be stewards of our district and our taxpayers. And, I just at least want to bring it up for discussion, see what people think. If you have any input, that'd be great. We're gonna vote on it next month, I assume, so I just at least want to share some ideas and some thoughts. That's kind of where I'm at. So I don't know if anybody has any input. But
No, I would
Yeah.
just say amount, the teachers, the janitors, the bus drivers, all these folks are getting raises.
yeah,
Why can't the district raise that too? What have you paid more for than you used to buy 8 years ago?
yeah,
I mean, everything's gone up. I think they should be expected, and probably really think about it. And I'm not saying we're doing it just to expect it, but our budget isn't way above the
Yeah.
going either.
no, I get it. And that's the thing, though, looking at all these numbers, they're 7, 8, 9-digit numbers, right? We're talking about 10 to 20,000, so it's like, it's a drop in the bucket, but it is real money. We need to watch every penny we spend as a district, which we do, but from a family standpoint, that's a substantial increase. I have multiple kids with multiple activities. That's a big jump to be like 4 times what Morton is, and everybody else is at 0 with the exception of Canton. So before we take that, just again add more burden to our taxpayers and our parents. So how do we cover those fees now? So I assume historically, we saw back a couple years, if we're short 15, 20 grand for the whole year, where does that come from? A fund, general funds, or is that like? Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So those fees that we pay, and so if a parent has 3 kids, they play multiple sports, they pay $600, where does that influx of money go?
It's tagged for the athletic part,
Is it?
isn't it tagged for athletics? Yeah. So they're not gonna use it somewhere else.
I was just asking, because I don't know. Yeah, I got you.
It doesn't nearly cover the cost of referees, of 3 or 4% increase in the stipend every year for the sponsor, for the assistant coaches, for the No, it doesn't
Yeah.
even come close to
I
that.
got
We don't expect it to cover that, but
Right.
it does help. And I will say, from a historical basis, I wanna say 8 years ago, it was $100.
Yeah,
And, Beth Reed, I believe, made a motion to lower it to 90. So we haven't even raised it. In fact, we lowered it. So it's been 8 years, and while our budget's gone up probably 3 and 4%
Yeah.
every year, I think that was probably the impetus for, why it was suggested.
and that's fair. I get that. That makes sense. I just would be hesitant to jump to
I think
150 and
yes,
200. That's a substantial hit for a lot of families. That's just,
I agree that, to double it or triple it would be one thing, but we
Yeah.
need to maybe consider
Yeah.
something.
okay.
I'd make, two comments. One, I was surprised to see what the other schools are doing or not doing in this regard. That was eye-opening to me. And then the other is, when we're talking about athletics, but when you go to register your kid for school, there's a list that pops up in the Power School, is that what it's called? Power School. I actually do it, so I know. It's one of my jobs, so I actually do that. But on the Power School, there's a whole list of things on there, and this is not just athletics. I don't want to make it more complicated
it's not.
than it needs to be. However, you're talking about a lot of non-athletic activities like chess club or FBLA or some of these other things are on that list that add into the, if your kid is going to do one or more of these things. And I think that we need to keep that in mind if we're really going to be talking about, well, what is this costing the district? I think there are things that are a little less resource required or intense that these potential funds might be going to as well. So just something to keep in mind, that's all.
So is your average student including the chess club? Is your average number of students including the chess club or just the athletic
I
portion?
think Dr. Dearman would know that.
In this year, he sent this out. When,
I would assume those numbers include participation in any of those that are charging a fee. Yeah, which is right, it could be,
So band and,
the scholastic bowl.
right. That's all
Is
included
subject
in
to
that,
that, so
yeah.
it's not all just athletics, Tom is correct. I'll just make, the administrative recommendation, talking with, Mr. Holmes, others around the office, Dr. Holmes, this is my first year, it did get lowered from 100 to 90, and our costs have gone up. So I think an increase is justified. I'm okay with that. I would ask the board to consider if there's going to be an increase. I don't like the idea of, well, if you do a second sport, it's this much more, so third sport, it's that much more. Just because of the logistics it's gonna put on Jason's office to track all that and the potential for error. And then the other anomalies, we'll have a kid pays a fee, goes out for a week and decides he doesn't wanna do that activity or that sport. Are we gonna reimburse that? It just complicates things unnecessarily. So I'd like to keep it simple. If there is an increase, let's just do it on the front end one time and keep it at
Yeah,
this.
and I will say just one more point, and then we can move on, because it's gonna be a long night, but, rightfully so, our administrators do a great job of encouraging our students and our kids to go out for as many things as they can, right? Do as many activities you can, especially in middle school, speaking to some of the administration. So, we know that it helps them develop lifelong skills, character traits, all that good stuff, team building, mentally, socially, emotionally, and physically, right? It helps them. It's part of the educational experience that we offer. So we want to encourage that. I just hate to increase it so much to where now we're just making it harder for those kids to actually be involved with multiple activities. And I'll leave it at that.
I don't think the intent was ever to charge all these little clubs because they don't have the expense that this. Athletics do, but I don't know how you separate that. Maybe it's too hard to do.
There are certain clubs, he was explaining to me earlier, that, they still travel, they have, competitions, they pay those fees, that, like, Scholastic Bowl has competitions, and those things get charged. So I think that was considered in the list, but not all the activities have a fee. There are some that don't have a fee, they do individual fundraising, they sell donuts, or whatever it is that they do, so I think that
agree with Tim that, you know, our costs are going up. We should look at that, but I'm also gonna support what Andrew's saying. The absolute last thing I wanna do is discourage or make it harder for our kids to get involved in the activities, not just athletic, but all activities. And the extra cost is diminishing those opportunities. We're probably not doing the best thing we can do for our kids.
Also, those fees are waived for students who have low income, so there are students that, if they do have a hardship, they can make it up.
Doesn't apply to all of our kids. So I guess if Dr. Dearman, your recommendation to the board is that we look at a one-time fee and maybe bump it some, but not that overlay the complexities of another fee for each other specific activity.
I think that would complicate it more than is what's necessary.
Tim, maybe we can, you know, look at something like that instead of.
I read a really good dissertation about the benefits of extracurricular participation in academic achievement, and, yeah, that was mine, I wrote that. So this is very important to me and something I definitely, believe in strongly, the benefits of extracurricular participation.
I can just add, it's also a great benefit and experience for a kid to get a part-time job for a month or two. You know, that really gives them money and they build responsibility there too. So don't think that you can only learn at school, you can learn in a part-time job.
Oh, for sure, like my son, for example, has a job, so we're good.
Mike can pay their.
Yeah, you're right. He pays for not enough. Slugger.
Okay, if there's no further discussions or comments, next, Dr. Andrews and Dr. Hastings will be presenting information regarding the staffing request and the enrollment update.
Okay, so really quick, my portion of the presentation is going to be presenting just an enrollment update for the next school year, as well as just giving a very high-level enrollment projection update over the next several years. And then Dr. Hastings will discuss special education department staffing. So just a precursor going into this, just so we know, as you know, none of you are, this won't be new information to any of you, that we are, of course, very full, in particular our elementary buildings. And so our enrollment practices have been that we maximize our available spaces within those buildings. And so just want to give a little bit of life and show how we've done that to varying degrees at all of our elementary buildings. Our goal has been, and our directive has been, from members of this board and previous, to keep students at home schools to the extent possible. That's just not always possible when the grade levels are full. You know, people move in during the middle of the year. And then when we do have those instances where students are displaced, that we are managing that and communicating with families how displacement is going to be handled moving forward. So you see that information that's provided there. The next slide is the same as it's been for the last several years, just with this year added. Again, you do see their enrollment has gone up, but obviously not to as large of an exponential level of an increase as you might have had at the late 2000s, early 2010. But yet still increasing, and then you have larger cohorts of students that are going out to those levels. So for each elementary school, you'll see the slide has different considerations on the left that they've done to maximize space in there, and what ways they've consolidated in order to make rooms for more classrooms, whether that's for more sections of grade level classes or services and programs that we are offering within that building. And so on the far right, you'll see for each of the elementaries what the current enrollment is on each grade level. And for that near capacity number, that's how many seats we have left at that grade level. And then below that is what the projected enrollment would be for next year, assuming the grades going up. Kindergarten enrollment is still live and going active, and so we don't have numbers on that at this time. Some things that are specific to Banner that they've done to circumvent spacing issues is just putting related services staff into the same space, which of course it does the job, and can see how how at all those buildings, each inch of space is being maximized to its full potential. With the exception of Hickory Grove, all elementary schools do not have a private space for the building nurses when they're seeing kids.
So they do that in the office, Matt?
Typically in the office, yeah. At Dunlap Grade School, again, you see the enrollment grid there on the right table. And then, again, some similar things that are being done where you have band and orchestra utilizing corridors or hallways. Specifically to Dunlap Grade, their interventionists who were in a classroom were moved to a space that was previously a storage area, but was before they moved their transition years ago to a resource room. It's great, and it's the needs for now. It is off the gym. It was never intended to be a place for instruction to happen. But again, utilizing just spaces that weren't necessarily intended for that for that. For Hickory Grove, we know obviously to be our largest school, that has seen the most shift and change to some of those original spaces. The good thing is that they have those spaces to configure and repurpose for the time being. But just to give like an idea of things we have in arts, it's no longer an art classroom, it's on the stage, which for about 3 hours each day is butts up to the cafeteria, so then they have the increased noise of 150 kids for 30 minutes apiece for 3 hours in there for lunch. With that plus you also have, because of the number of students and the limited amount of space they have to serve lunch, you have just a long lunch window. They can shift which grade will start the earliest, but you have lunch starting at 10:30, and then the last lunch starting at 12:55. Fifth grade. At Ridgeview, again, you have related services staff that are either servicing in cubicles that are currently situated in the cafeteria, as well as the space for them to write up their notes on the sessions that they have, actually provide some service, speak with parents, etc. All the logistical paperwork things they need to do. Repurposing the library space, which of course does make that cumbersome because we still want students to come in and read and pick up books. So, but again, very thankful that they're being very understanding of that. And then at Wild Awaits, obviously another one that we've talked about quite a bit frequently. You have had the addition of different programs there. Most recently, the instructional program that was brought back this school year, which required two classrooms. So then it displaced a classroom like that, and then the potential need for just with increased needs to have different programs in the space. It's just not optimal for them being acclimated to the building, parents knowing which building their students would be in it, to know the staff of the building, the principal of that building, especially when we're talking about ECE and the early intervention that's taking place. For the middle schools, again, similar thing. You'll just see projected enrollment going up a little bit higher since we're able to roll those students up. These figures are, of course, in line with this insight. I've done the calculations myself, and then literally the next day got it from Decision Insight, which is fantastic. But when you're looking at cohort change on average, you're looking at anywhere between plus or minus 15 on average, with the highest being the highest change being 30 either way, but those are outliers where that matters. In terms of within that same cohort of students at the beginning of the company. And so, the right side for the middle school, you'll just for both middle schools, you'll just see how various needs are being met with the staff that they currently have, and how we do know that as we've seen, as I reported back in November, we have had our highest amount of growth of both ELA and math at the middle school levels. Doing a fantastic job with those increased supports and needs that are being done, both for replacement and for skill deficit areas. But with that, the increased number of students that continue to enroll and enroll up rather, will require us to just keep an eye on that and determine how can we make sure that we are able to provide that same level of service with the staff that we have. And it does for a little bit there, as you can see from the enrollment projection, it goes up, but then it does go back down. So those are considerations that we are taking a look at, which is gives potential for the future. And then at Dunlap Valley, you don't see as drastic of a change over the course of between next year and 2031. So that's shift was, or the burden of that is that banner and the curriculum, so that's why it's not impacting the Platte Valley as much next year. And then at the high school, again, you see an increase also in near 50 for next year, and at the beginning of each school year, our number at the high school does float quite a bit. My guess would be that that would be anywhere from 20 to 25 more than what you see on that realized enrollment number of 1437. Beginning of every school year, we're always much higher than we are typically even by the end of that first semester. But the actuality is we still have to have seats in place to put those students regardless of how long they're within our walls. And so we will continue to monitor enrollment and update you on that, but just be aware that there will be some needs that we'll have coming forward. So you see those listed here. Just the obvious thing for the elementary, or I'm sorry, for the high school would be, and to have that large increase, in particular between 2029-2032 would be staffing for core courses. There's just no way you'd be able to meet that need within the master schedule as it is. But then with that will also come space. Different things we're looking at and considering, and how can we do that in an effective way. Again, options and additional that will be provided to you at a later time, but just so it's on your radar now. And then, of course, we know, and we've had just various conversations this week, been entertaining or discussing and moving forward with building a new Wilder Way, just how that will be able to increase functionality at each elementary building. There will be a positive ripple there. So something that we are looking forward to having in place. That's my piece. Dr. Hazel.
All right, I'm coming to you tonight with some really great news. We've been talking about a lot of heavy things here, but I want to tell you about how great things are going in special education. Hopefully this slide was easy to understand. I'm going to point out some highlights of changes that have occurred. We've been very good stewards with the resources that we've had, and I want to thank you for giving us the instructional programs this year at the elementary level, because reinstituting those programs did just what I was hoping for. It relieved some of the pressure on our resource caseload. So as a result, some of our resource caseloads have gone down. So as you can see from the chart, what I'm able to do is I'm going to be taking two of my teachers and they'll become itinerant, meaning they're going to travel between two different schools because their caseload went from full time to half time. So that's going to allow us to meet some of the needs in our other spaces within our district. So you're going to notice that there's a little blue square on there and it says STARS. We have 152 children in our district that have primary disability autism. There is a small percentage with very significant autism, to the point where the programs that we have are not a fit for them because they require a very specific kind of method. It's called the structured teaching approach. So with our staff at Hickory Grove, we're able to reassign one of our resource teachers to the STARS program, which will service 5 students. I was trying to hold on for a Wilder Way so that we could open 2 of these programs, but we're just at the point where we're having to contract with Total Spectrum, which is one of our local providers, to provide ABA therapy because our regular programming just isn't fitting some of our students. So this is increasing some expense. If we are able to offer programming for kids on the spectrum following this model, we won't have to use expensive outside resources to meet our students' needs. I also want to point out that we have done a lot of work with streamlining our programs, and one of the things that we discovered while we were doing that is that our life skill population really has a separation. There's 2 grades of life skills. We have one that's lower cognitive ability, another that's slightly higher and have more social skills and communication skills. So we're recognizing this higher functioning group as the skill builders. So when you take a look at the row where you see Dunlap Middle School, right now we have 2 instructional classrooms, 1 in each middle school, but oddly enough, the population of kids at Dunlap Valley really fall within that skill builder category. So we're just going to be renaming that group instead of instructional, it's going to be skill
if I heard you right, I've already lost the name, but the thing you're doing with the 5
The
children
STARS
at
program,
Hickory Grove,
yes.
so if is that something then that down the road would be, I mean, I know it's based on need, but that could be then expanded or rolled out to other, because you're only, the 5, surely those 5 children at Hickory Grove are not the only kids that probably fall within the parameters, but the fact that they've clustered, that there's 5 of them, it makes sense, but if it's successful there, and should the population or the needs warrant it, it's something you could expand to other elementary schools, right?
Yes, you're bringing up a very good point. The reason why the class is so small to start out, this is my 4th time cooking program for students on the spectrum. It's very difficult. I could even argue if Bibles, our behavior program, have to have very dedicated staff that have the patience to implement programming for children that are severe in one space. So experience has taught me you have to only start with 5. Let's get the systems down, let's have successful staff, and then once we are stable, we can gradually add to that. Now, the maximum capacity on a special ed classroom like this is 13 with teachers and TAs at a minimum. So, yes, we'll grow in time, but right now we're just constricted by the sheer volume of students that we have in the district. I do foresee carrying this through the middle school and high school when we're able to spin out some space. But right now, the most immediate need is at the elementary level. And so we've decided that it makes sense to go with a range of 1st through 4th grade because legally we're not allowed to go more than a range of 4 years. So this is why we targeted 1st through 4th.
This isn't a new employee, this is just something you're
No,
shifting
this
around.
is just
Okay.
moving things around with the personnel that we have. However, there is one new hire here because we don't have a teacher that we can move enough around to bring them up to run the skill builder classroom at the high school. So go ahead.
So you mentioned, real quick before you go on, that the life skills population has doubled. In what time frame has that
1
doubled?
year's time. We just have a big cluster moving from the 8th grade
Okay,
into high school.
gotcha, thank you.
So,
So you're asking for 1 teacher and then a psychologist and a social worker, so 3 positions.
yes.
And how much has our student population increased by?
We have 755 students with IEP, so that's overall, that's
How many?
100.
Okay, but how many has it increased since last year?
100.
100 more students and you're only asking for 3, you're asking for 3 positions.
Yes. We're trying to be very conservative with what I'm asking.
Thank you.
All right, so let's take a look at this chart. This is showing you the volume of evaluations that each of our teams are carrying to make it easy. We're showcasing on the left-hand side what grade center these different teams are serving. So you're going to notice that to the far right-hand side, an evaluation team consists of a school psychologist and a social worker. But our social workers have to provide direct service to students in addition to evaluating. So you can see on the far right-hand side that our social workers aren't just carrying a high evaluation load, but they have a cluster of students that they have to serve. That's a real strain on their time. If you go to our next slide, you're going to see some snapshots of other districts within this area and their averages for evaluations. When you do the math, you can see that our teams are averaging 80 evaluations a year. That's just incredible. It's almost double what the averages of our surrounding partners. So even if you grant this 15, my teams are still going to carry an average of 65 evaluations. That's 15 over what everyone else is carrying. So at a minimum, I am asking for 1 new team to relieve this burden on
noticed Champaign got a bunch of funds from the state for some of this stuff. Do we apply for them, I assume? Did get any funding additional? I don't know what it's for.
Well, we have the IDEA grant, which is for special education funds. They're probably also drawing extra income because of the socioeconomic dynamics of their school district. And since you brought Champaign up, I'll tell you Arena. Even though the landscape is a little different there, they are the same size as us, and they have 7 psychologists and 13 social workers. So it's amazing what our teams have been able to do with the manpower that we have at the moment.
They have 7 and 13, and how many do we have?
We have 4. 4 of each. Oh, I'm sorry, 5 social workers. I have 4 psychologists and 5 social workers.
Any further questions about either one of these presentations? Thank you very much for
Wait,
providing.
no, there are other questions.
Okay. well,
Dr. Hastings, maybe in the past, you've calculated what is the additional cost for these
That is
positions?
about 200,000. It will depend upon the final candidate, but a rough estimate, but by taking a look at where we've been when we started,
Yeah.
about 200,000 for all 3 positions.
So we're looking at this, Dr. Hastings, here's your request. Matt, maybe I'm overlooking it, I don't see one from you, is there?
There are no general, there's not, it's just special education needs to be done.
So you're not asking for any additions for next year? No.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Information regarding the 2025-28 Peoria County School Resource Officer Agreement has been included in the board packet. I believe Dr. Dearman gave us a pretty good explanation in his report. Any discussion or questions? Information regarding the Dunlap grade school pavement project has been included in the board packet. Any questions or discussion? There was a graph that was in
So
there.
I have a comment about that. So that north entrance that's not on the village, or it's on the village's property, is that I mean, I know we have an amicable relationship with them now and they're letting us use that, but that seems really risky to have a key piece of our property that's not on our land. Is that something that we could talk to the village about, like selling? I mean, can they sell part of that, or it just? I mean,
I think it's also, they are utilizing that for their parking for the park. For years, people would have, where the pavilion is, I don't know if you've seen it, but people have picnics, and so they.
So either we're gonna be using their property, or
They're gonna be using ours.
Well, you don't have to, would they be willing to give us an easement? Access?
They do.
I'm just thinking if somebody, you know, if the village ever, if they ever sell it to a private party or, you know, it just seems like a looming issue. We have a key piece of that property is not ours.
yeah, I didn't know that was passed on, so I guess we won't realize that either, so. That's why they won't spending money on it, knowing it's not ours, so you guys have your.
Would they be willing to share it? So maybe it's time we look at some type of formal agreement, but I know it's been going on since.
I think it'd just be worth at least talking to the village and seeing what they're willing to do. So, on good terms.
To be clear, talking about what?
I think, you know, buying that piece of property, you know, not that whole lot, but just enough to cover that entrance. So,
If we buy it, we can pay for it, you get an easement. Now it's.
and that's a little out of my, you know, I mean, I kind of know what an easement is, but
I don't think we want to buy it, because they're still gonna wanna use it for their park, I think needs it. They'll come up with a formal agreement, hey, we gotta share a piece here.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah.
Maybe we just float it from them, if it's gonna stay that way for a long, long time. Yeah,
It's been that way since I was.
Something more formal than a gentleman's agreement, I think would be.
I think we could maybe see if we can write something up formally, but it's been that way for 60 years.
try and work with them to get maybe a more formal agreement other than a handshake.
All right. Any further discussion?
You need to run for mayor.
Information regarding the Banner Elementary School piping project has been included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this concludes the information discussion segment of the meeting. The board will now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any clarifications or discussions needed regarding items on the consent agenda?
I'd like a point of order, if I may.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I
sir.
looked at the minutes, I wasn't here last month, and the meeting was 18 minutes. For the record, I want it to be clear that the difference tonight is not because of my presence. Okay? It's not because I'm here. Go ahead.
May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wagonball. Is there a second?
Not second.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Feldman,
Aye.
Olszewski. Aye. Hodel,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Tyra,
Aye.
Wagonbach,
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Motion carried. Board will now move on to action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, district investment report, bank statements are all included in the board packet. Any discussion?
I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
He's over there. Can you hear me fine? I got a question for you. On the bill list, there's one item that says teacher vacancy grant revenue.
They gave us money that we did not spend, so we're just.
They gave us money we did not spend.
They fund, most grants they fund, have to use their money. But that grant was already funded up front, and then because we didn't do as well, they were.
That's $107,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're returning money to.
I understand. I get why we use it. Yeah, but, yeah, exactly.
But if you get to the funds material, we're able to hold it all in the first time. It's just when we got the funds, we did not have. Set that budget, and we thought that it was, like it was, that it wasn't a clear deal, that it was a grant we received from fund, because again, we typically spend for these reports, and that we get.
We never get grants.
Always not from that grant. And so that was, you know.
We'll get that back.
Okay, good question. May I have a motion to approve payment of bills?
I move to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $4,717,150.94 as presented.
May I have a second?
Second? Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hodel. I thought that was you, but I wasn't quite sure. This concludes the action item portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to closed session. May I have a motion to adjourn closed session?
No, we need to vote it.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Let's vote. Roll call, please.
Olszewski.
Aye.
Hodel,
Aye.
Humbles,
Aye.
Tyra,
Aye.
Wagonbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Motion carried. Now may I have a motion to go into closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the Open Meetings Act. The appointment, employment, compensation, performance of specific employees, student disciplinary cases, collective negotiating matters, litigation, security procedures, discussions of minutes and meetings lawfully closed, and the purchase of real property.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Time is 7:29 PM. Go ahead. Sure, sure, sure. That was a good point. Wings might be the easiest way to do it. They should have it
Yeah, when I saw that,
Yeah.
I saw his little report, and I went to GIS, and I saw that. But that is working.
Yeah, no, because you're absolutely right. It's okay as long as everybody gets along.
Right,
But the
yeah.
day, the time you don't, watch out.
for the night, it would be even better.
Abby, can we get moving so we can get
No,
going?
no, Tom.
Tom's Training Center.
I think the nest is fine.
Are we ready to go? Are we waiting for somebody?
Could I have a motion to return to open session, please?
I move to return to open session.
Thank you, Mr. Holdel.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, 8:30. Could I have a motion to approve the human resource consent agenda? 8:36, sorry.
I move to approve the Human Resources Consent Agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Roll call vote.
Tyra,
Aye.
Wagenbach,
Aye.
Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Olshauser,
Aye.
Hodo,
Aye.
Humble.
Motion carried. May I please have a motion to approve the special education supervisor contract?
I
She
move
was-
to approve the special education supervisor contract as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Hodel. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Roll call vote.
Wagenbach. Wisdom,
Aye.
Feldman,
Aye.
Olshauser,
Aye.
Hodo,
Aye.
Humble,
Aye.
Tyra.
Aye.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Yes.
Okay, so that was Hodel second and Mr. Feldman.
Wisdom.
What wisdom?
I don't want to give that to you. So that was clearly.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned, 7:38.
Now you mean, hey,